Remember these 9 words: undermine our allies, embolden our enemies, and diminish our country. I submit they describe to a T the Obama Doctrine with respect to American security policy. All of them were much in evidence in last week's announcement that the United States would not proceed with the deployment in Poland and the Czech Republic of anti-missile systems necessary to defend us against intercontinental range ballistic missiles out of Iran. They'll also be much in evidence this week as President Obama meets with a gaggle of foreign leaders. The bottom line of the Obama Doctrine, unfortunately, is predictable. It is one in which we will be living in a world in which we have fewer friends, not only more but more aggressive enemies, and an America that has fewer options for dealing with such a world. Let me just say a few words about this missile defense decision, I should say. It was made ostensibly on the grounds that U.S. intelligence has just concluded that the Iranian long-range missile threat is not as far along as we had thought. If that were true, and I have to tell you, I've got serious doubts as to whether it is true in light of both the progress that the Iranians have been making with solid fuel technology and their successful launch of an intercontinental range missile into space. That is to say, a space launch vehicle that put a satellite up there. But let's just say for the purpose of the discussion that it is true, that Iran actually has slowed down or is running into technical problems that are compelling it to slow down its long-range missiles. What that would mean is basically we might have a missile defense against such a threat in place before we needed it. What a concept. That option is no longer operative. We will now no longer have a long-range missile defense placed in Europe, or for that matter, anywhere else against the Iranian threat. I happen to be a strong proponent of the sorts of missile defenses that the President has said he will deploy in a mode that will be, how did he put it, smarter, swifter, stronger. That's all great. But those defenses against relatively short-range missiles are something that we should be putting into place together with, not instead of, defenses for Europe and for us against the longer-range missiles that Iran is now building. What the President has transparently done is taken a dive for the Russians. They strenuously objected to this deployment. They have put intense pressure upon our allies to renege, and obviously they made the President an offer he couldn't refuse. They decided to withhold perhaps support for his Iranian sanctions or the successful completion of a New START agreement, or, I don't know, maybe some photo op somewhere in the world in order to get the President to accede to their demands that this European so-called third site be canceled. Whatever the President thinks he's getting for that deal, I think it very unlikely to amount to anything. I don't think we're going to see Russian support for sanctions against Iran. They're supporting Iran at every turn with advanced technology, including nuclear technology, with very capable aircraft defenses designed to protect the nuclear sites against Israeli or perhaps our attacks. And not least the political cover that the Iranians have desperately needed in international fora. I think the Russians are going to demand concessions from us on these START talks, something that, frankly, the President is only too happy to make. He doesn't like nuclear weapons, and he wants to get rid of ours. Not just everybody's in the world, but ours. And that's been a an idée fixe, as the French say, a very firmly held view, apparently going back to 1983 for Barack Obama. So don't count on help from the Russians on any of this stuff. But more to the point, the president has emboldened the Iranians to believe that they now have a clear path to getting their nuclear weapon, to brandishing it, perhaps even to using it. We're certainly not going to have a defense against its threatened use in Europe, or perhaps against us. It remains to be seen whether we will in any other way interpose objections. But it certainly looks as right now that the administration, the Obama Doctrine, is signaling to the Iranians they can have their way in getting the means by which they say, in the person of Mahmoud Ahmadinejad, the president of Iran, they wish to wipe Israel off the map and, don't forget, to bring about a world without America. We'll see, I think, this same basic pattern play out with respect to Benjamin Netanyahu and Mahmoud Abbas in the upcoming talks at the White House about restarting the peace process in the Middle East, the so-called peace process. Namely, I think pressure will be opposed on our friend Israel to make territorial, political, and other concessions to people who are determined, as are other Islamists elsewhere around the world, to destroy us. That's true of not only Hamas in the Palestinian community, it's true of Fatah. They say so endlessly. We ignore it at our peril. I think the same sort of bottom line, sort of policy thrust of the Obama Doctrine will be much in evidence at the UN as well, where, among other things, President Obama will for the first time preside over a UN Security Council meeting, the purpose of which will be to promote his idea of a world without nuclear weapons. Not getting rid of the Iranian nuclear weapon program, not getting rid of the North Korean nuclear weapons program, but how the United States and these other nuclear states, designated as such under the Nuclear Non-Proliferation Treaty, can persuade the rest of the world that they really are committed to denuclearization. Again, the bottom line is nobody's going to do that except us. And I hope we won't, but that certainly will be the thrust of the president's policy. And then finally, there will be this group in Pittsburgh, of the so-called G20. There, it seems, we're going to hear a lot about sovereignty-sapping global financial regulations as a way to deal with the past problems with the financial sector. We're also, I think, quite clearly going to be seeing the United States and perhaps other developed nations trying to bribe emerging, developing powers in China, India, and Brazil perhaps, to engage in some sort of climate change treaty to be negotiated in Copenhagen at the end of the year. The inducement being not only technology transfer and development aid, but also some kind of institutionalization of their emerging role in the world, making them full parties to perhaps the UN Security Council, perhaps to special meetings of G-whatevers to ensure that their emerging influence and prominence is guaranteed. In all these ways, I think we're going to see more and more and more evidence of those 9 words. A president who is undermining our allies, who is emboldening our foes, and who is diminishing the sovereign, independent, and superpower status of the United States of America. Saul Alinsky would be proud.